show is dedicated to Mia Park and Barbara Yang. The views expressed on the following show may not be those of the hosts, guests, or WSPN Skidmore Radio. Talk Saratoga is produced by Saratoga Broadcasting Incorporated and may not be reproduced in part or in whole unless expressed written approval is given. Now, here are the hosts of Talk Saratoga, Rick Thompson and a Saratoga All-Star.
Good morning and welcome to Talk Saratoga. It is April the 5th already, and I say this every week, so I can't miss saying it. I don't know where the time's gone by. We're already through the first quarter of the year, starting into the second quarter. And before you know it, the Saratoga Racing is going to be here, and I'll be away for July and August, hopefully, working at the track if everything goes right. Excuse me. Anyway, I want to introduce our special guest this morning, and Rosemarie Smith, who's the Business Development and Public Relations Officer at Saratoga's Community Federal Credit Union. And I want to welcome you, Rosemarie.
Thank you. Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history, your background, and then how you kind of, I don't want to say morphed into the credit union movement, but, you know, you got a great background, so why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, well, I'm fourth generation Lake Placid, so I'm a good Adirondack girl. I raised my boys for a good portion of their life out in Washington County in Cambridge, so I'm very familiar with that area. When I was out west, on top of working my way up to market president in Northwest Colorado, I also was a rancher. I raised Scottish Highland cattle.
Now, what are they?
Those are what people joke about as the hairy hippie cows.
Okay. With
the big horns and the long hair, and they're absolutely adorable. So anyway, I raised them, and I showed them in the National Western Stock Show. We had one, my partner Leo, my cow partner Leo, in Silverthorne, and I raised them, and the one of them that placed, her name was Hillary, because we were both originally from New York, living in Colorado.
Oh, boy.
So her name was Hillary. So anyway, I've been in banking for about 33 years. 2/3 of that I was with in banks, and the last third of that I've been into the credit union world. I had a great experience in all of it. I worked for some very large, bank corporations, Glacier Bank Corporation out of Montana, Zion's Bank Corporation in Salt Lake City. Actually worked for P&B Paribas, who at that point the U.S. location was out of San Francisco. So I've spent my career, part of it in Colorado and part of it in upstate New York. I consider both home. My boys are still out west, so I have a great place to visit all the time.
Yeah, really.
But I ended up switching over to the credit union world. As I said, I loved my career. I've had great opportunities and met awesome people. But I felt like I could do more, and I wanted it to be more personal. And in the bigger bank world, I think we lose that sometimes. And I had a friend who had been in the credit union world in upstate New York, over in Rensselaer County, for a very long time. And he had always said to me, oh, had sung its praises, and this was why I needed to go, and all of this. And he offered me a position, and I took it. I came back to New York, and I went to work for him. That's how I ended up in the credit union world. The reason for that, as I said, I'm not bashing big banks. They definitely have their place. I think credit unions and banks work very well together. But I felt like I could do more for more people. Credit union is, I look at it, it's more personal. Mm-hmm. It's more, we are able to do some things for people that the bigger banks can't. I think one of the main examples for me is credit score. We have this saying at Saratoga Federal that we don't think your credit score should define you. I'm a big believer in life happens to people. Just because you have a lower credit score does not mean that, you know, you're a bad person or you haven't handled your finances correctly. I mean, people get divorced, people pass away, they have medical issues, you know, life just happens. And what I like, one of my main things that I've always liked about the credit union world is with Saratoga Federal, we do loans, everybody gets the same interest rate. Where in big banks, you always notice, oh, wow, there's this sale on this product, this loan product or something, and it says this rate, and wow, and you get on there, and it says rates as low as.
Yeah.
That's as low as means that it's based on your credit score.
Sure.
So if you have a 600 score, you're not going to get the rate that an 800 score or 750 gets, or even a 700. But one of the things I loved about and why I transferred to the credit union world was my ability to help people with the lower credit scores, because it doesn't make sense if you really think about it, is you offer the lower rates to the higher credit score people who really don't, you know.
They can pay a little bit higher interest.
Right.
I mean, they may not want to, but they can afford to pay 1% or 1.5% more.
Yeah, they are not the ones that need the lower scores. So what we do is anyone 600 and above, everybody gets the same rate. Everybody gets treated exactly the same in the credit union world. It doesn't matter if you're an executive or who you are. And that's one of the things I liked, because when I was out west, I worked in a lot of resort areas. So there were, you know, a very big differential in economic levels. And you had the people who had this, you know, Steamboat or Aspen was their third home. And then you had the people who were working, doing, you know, basically the resort kind of jobs.
Sure.
Making, you know, minimum wage or a little bit above. So in the banks, and those people, you couldn't do the same thing for them, even though the lower end were really what needed your help. And it didn't matter, you know, in the credit union world, it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, what you do, everybody gets treated the same. So we are able to help people in a way that I couldn't at the big banks. And we were also somewhat limited. One of the other reasons, this might not be real popular, but one of the other reasons I liked it is there was a lot more levels in the banking world. And I started as a teller.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up to market president. So I've done all of it. But there were so many different levels in banking. In the credit union world, what I love is, you know, in the credit unions I've worked for, when you walk in, you know, the CEO is right there. Mm-hmm. You know, you can see him, or his office is right there. You can go in and you can talk to them. You can talk to all of the vice presidents. You can talk to the, you know, VP of lending, the, you know, VP of operations. You know, you can talk to the CFO.
Yep.
All of those people are there and available for you to talk to. And they're walking around the lobby, and it's not like they're shut away someplace.
Sure, in the back or in another building.
No,
whatever,
and I'm not saying, and I still believe that our front line, you know, different banks and credit unions have different names for what was originally way back when I started, referred to as a teller. Now they're customer service reps, and they're very different things. Those are the most I still think are the most important people in the branch.
Sure. We got talking about difference between a customer and a member. A customer is what banks usually refer to their customers as. In credit unions, you're a member because you own a part of the credit union when you have a savings account or you take a loan. So you're really a shareholder in the credit union, and you're treated as such. You know, I mean, our we were talking before, I've been on the board for quite a few years, and our members feel so good when they come in because the member service clerks talk to them like they know them, and after a while they come in and say, "Hey, Barb, how you doing?" And it's great, the rapport that the front line has with the members, and like you said, everybody's accessible to them. You know, they can see Don, the CEO, or Megan, and it's just amazing. You know, it's funny because when I started out in banking, you mentioned teller. Well, we had different departments in the line. There were like 3 tellers, and then you had the Christmas club. You had two people that were in the Christmas club windows, and then you had the mortgage. You made a payment for your mortgage at another clerk. That you had to go to those people. That one person couldn't, like a teller, couldn't handle the Christmas club payment. You had to send them down, and there were no computers, so everything was posted by hand. Interest on their cards, and every quarter we used to have to stay until like 1 a.m. and make sure all the cards balanced to the penny. But I started out in bookkeeping, and we had to hand do checks in order, and then they got their checks at the end of the month with their statement. And I look back on that now and say, holy mackerel, they really worked. And our pay wasn't that great. I'll tell you, it was terrible. I ended up being a loan officer after a couple months. You know, you have to go through every department. And I think I earned $100 a week. That was my salary. And I look back now and I say, how did we ever get there from the 70s up to where we are now, and everything is computerized? You can do so much more for a member that back then you really couldn't do.
No, I remember when I started, and we're dating ourselves here a little, on the line, you had to write in, with every transaction, you had to write a cash-in ticket and a cash-out ticket.
That's right.
And really the only machine you had in front of you was a calculator.
That's right.
And you had to roll your tape up at night, and you had to stick it in with your work and stuff like that. But I do think, I think it made us better at math.
I do too.
Because you had to start all that. But I mean, now with technology, it's a wonderful thing. What the girl, whoever is on the line, our staff is able to do, so like you said, so many more things when they come up and stand in front of someone. That staff member can do it all. They can do a loan. They can, refinance something for them. They can get them started on a mortgage. They can do their basic accounts. It's not, like you said, you didn't have to go to this window for the Christmas club and this one for this.
Right.
And this is in banks, too, a lot of times in banks too, but in credit unions, we tend to have, be smaller and more personal, not have as many departments and stuff like that. Like I said, everybody's accessible. So they're all trained to do almost everything. Mm-hmm. And it makes it easier for the member. They know that they can come in and see so-and-so, and that's all going to get done.
Yeah. Or, even online today, you can make payments online. You can transfer between a savings and checking account. There's so many things you can do without going into the credit union. And that makes it nice for people, because if they can't make it in on a Friday, they have automatic payroll into their checking or whatever account. I mean, there's so much more you can do today. And a lot of credit unions that are small don't offer all those services, but, and it's good when a credit union like ours can offer so many services.
I mean, that's what I love about us. One of the many things is, while we're smaller, we haven't kind of been taken over or swallowed up by a much larger credit union, and we're not in the billions. We're not even in, a lot of millions like, some of the other ones. We're still small. We're still personal. And I love that. Technology is a great thing, though. And a lot of people, I know, people will say, well, where are you located? I said, well, we have a couple of ranches in Saratoga. And, that's one of the things in differences with banks and credit unions. A lot of the big bank corps do have a tendency to have a lot more branches, have them all over. So as far as that goes, credit unions, for the most part, in their history is not to have as many branches as credit unions. Some of the big credit unions that have merged and become in the billions too, now when you add all their branches together, they do have a lot of branches, but the smaller credit unions don't. But in today's day and age, that doesn't really matter anymore.
No.
Because we do have all the online technology. We have the online banking. We have that. And we also have, essentially, I didn't get into what we had recently done. We've recently expanded.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah, recently expanded. It was just Saratoga County. And the credit union, when you want to expand, has to write something to the NCUA, National Credit Union Association, which is our governing body, like the FDIC is for banking. You have to petition almost a way to the NCUA and explain why you want to expand. You have to say why you feel that is a good thing. And basically that, usually when that happens, it's because you go into areas that are underserved in credit unions that don't have that population, that demographic, does not have access to credit unions. They have a lot more access to banks and not as many to credit unions. And a lot of times, like in our expansion, we recently expanded into Warren, Washington, Fulton, and Montgomery. Basically, the two sides of Saratoga County.
Right.
So we are now all that. And in doing that research for our expansion, the CEO, put down why we felt we needed to go there, how similar he felt the demographics were, what we could offer them, what we could do for them.
Right.
And one of the things we did have to explain, how I got to this, was we didn't have the branches out there. But there's this wonderful thing called shared branching network. And a lot of people don't realize that when you're a member of a credit union, and most credit unions belong to this shared branching network. And, I think there's over 5,000 nationwide shared branches. And locally, we have over 85 local shared branches. So what you can do as a member of Saratoga Federal is you could be out in, Amsterdam and go to a credit union out there and do your deposit or anything else you need done as a Saratoga Federal customer and do your banking there. Or you can go up to Lake George, or you can go over to, Washington County. You can go over to a credit union that, used to cover Comstock Prison. You can go anywhere to these little credit unions. So why we technically only have 2 bricks and mortars with, and we are talking about putting some other ones in these other new areas, we are still everywhere.
Sure. One of the things about that also is, because I know some people said, gee, I don't know if I want to do that. You can go in there and you won't get a sales pitch to join their credit union. That they can't do that.
You're right.
And if someone came into our credit union, we couldn't say, hey, why don't you join us?
Absolutely
you can't
not.
do that. It's strictly if you're in an area that you want to do something, you can go in. If they're a member of the shared branching and that. But, you had mentioned about the brick and mortar where the big banks and some of the bigger credit unions now that are evolving like banks did, which we got talking before about growing so big, is that by not having so many brick and mortar buildings, or even leasing, not owning, but you can take that money and give it back to the members in lower rates or more services, because we're not paying out the lease payments every month on maybe 10 or 12 different branches. So I think that's important also. And that's where the internet comes in, where you can do some things online. I mean, I liken it to, and this is just an example. It's nothing to do with it, but I work at the track during the summer, and people can bet on their phones now. They don't even have to go to the track. So they're saving themselves money, number one, because they don't have to pay admission. They don't have to pay for the food there. They can watch the races on TV, and they can make a bet on their phone. And with the credit union, you have the option of doing phone phone transactions. But you also have the shared branching network, which is huge because you can go wherever you are. If they're a member, you can do your credit union transactions right there.
Right. I think, and one of the main things also with differences in banks and credit unions, it boils down to kind of two words: people and profits. The credit unions are more about the people, because we are a not-for-profit organization. We're not in it we don't have to worry about how much money we're going to make for the shareholders. We don't have to answer to that, like, you didn't have this good quarter, or, I'm not going to get this much money. Everything we make goes back to our members. And when you belong to a credit union, you're an owner, per se.
Exactly.
You have a say in what goes on. You can vote on things. We have an annual meeting. You are, for lack of a better word, an owner, which is one of the reasons I've had an account at a credit union before I even got into banking, and I always had a credit union account. Yep. Way back when it was just, you hardly had anything, and there were some of these places were like little closets.
Hey, I had a trailer when I joined Fulton County Teachers Credit Union.
Yep.
Back then, you could join if you had a family member. Mm-hmm. If you weren't a teacher, you had a family member that was. So I joined. Actually, my father his account number was 52 because he was the 52nd one. Member, and mine was, I think, 104. But they were in places like a trailer. Our credit union was run out of a house. Mm-hmm. Joan Wagner, who was the CEO at the time, and that's how you keep expenses down and give more back to the members. And no matter how many products you have, if you make money off of the products, it goes back into the members. And like you said, or more products. We're not there to make a profit. We're not there to take huge losses. But the board tries to balance out everything. And this Don and Megan and Rachel, the CEO, CFO, and the treasurer, they do a great job in keeping things lined up so that we're, doing the best job possible for the members.
No, and I think in credit unions, as we're talking about how they used to be in closets, and I don't think people realize that originally credit unions started as they called a seg, or you had to be, our credit union started in 1945, and it started to serve the Saratoga Springs School District teachers. So it's been around since 1945, and that's why I started. And like yours probably was there, GE had its own credit union.
Right.
And most schools did, and most, different, I know over in Vermont, Eveready had the Eveready plant over there outside of Bennington had its little credit union in a closet. Yeah. And, hospitals and things like that, they all had their own credit union. And that's kind of changed over the years. It's gotten much broader and opened more. So, my God, look at Navy Credit Union.
Oh, yeah.
That is probably the hugest one in the country. And not everyone that belongs to Navy, was in the service or stuff like that. When that started way back then,
right, there
was so many more restrictions. So it is so much different. And that, having expanded it was starting in 1942, and then we went, when we changed your charter, which is what I'm talking about, we changed our charter to a community credit union from just like what was called a specific type of credit union for a specific industry or business. So we became a community credit union. So that's how we became Saratoga's community credit union, when we could do all of Saratoga. Mm-hmm. And now with this expansion, we're still a community credit union, a community charter. So we do the communities, but all the communities we serve is no longer just Saratoga County.
Correct.
It's Washington, Warren, Fulton, and Montgomery.
Yep.
So now we have a whole lot of communities. that we can serve. And that's something we're really excited about. And I mean, we do have we have some employees currently that live and have worked in those areas. Myself, I spent a lot of time in Washington and Warren County, both personally and professionally. I, on top of being in the Adirondacks and, being in Lake George area, and of course that's way up into Essex and all of that sort of stuff. And we have staff that is more over in Fulton and Montgomery County. So it was a really good fit for us, the counties that we picked. Because even though, people say, well, you were only Saratoga, the people that work for us and our friends and our family and stuff like that, they were in these areas. And, we were involved, a lot of the employees and stuff like that, were involved in these areas anyway, personally. Now, we can be even more a part of the communities where we live and work or have family in, or our kids play sports in, or we belong to organizations to. Now we can be a part of all of that, because that is our whole community now.
Some people may be thinking, well, you know what? I worked for GE and we had a credit union and everything was fine. The thing is, though, these small credit unions for businesses or schools got so, the rules had changed so much, and they made it stricter on how you do things. And it was the government, NCUA, regulations and that. So these little mom and pop credit unions, and there's nothing wrong with those, believe me, found it harder to keep up with all the rules and regulations, because most of the time their CEOs may have been a part of that group. So, the pay wasn't great, and they were doing it as a small credit union. So it wasn't the fact that credit unions at that time started gobbling everything up. And that's the reason why the Saratoga Teachers became Saratoga Community Federal Credit Union, because you had to open it up to a larger segment, and so we could offer more products and services. And as you had said in the beginning, these billion-dollar credit unions have moved away from, I think, the credit union movement. And,
yes.
And I think you kind of agree. So one of the things, another thing about moving into these other areas, the different counties is, and you put it the great way, that there was a lot of research that went into it by, Don, our CEO, and Megan and that. Because when you applied, you had to show why you wanted to expand, not just for expansion purposes. But there is a need in these other counties. And here again, we want to serve those communities and offer products and services that they can't get anywhere close.
Right, it kind of goes back to, the people versus profit. Now, a lot of places expand for, not only for growth purposes, but to increase their profits and all of that sort of stuff. We expanded, but again, it's more for the people. And in our research to be able to do this expansion, we had to, as I said, Don had to explain to the NCOA, because this is not just something you write, I want this, and they give it to you. It can be like a year-long process to get this expansion. And they really make sure that what you're doing, the NCOA, is the right thing, and you're going into being part of the credit union movement. They want it to be that kind of expansion. They want it to be, what are you going to do for those areas that they don't already have? What are you going to be able to offer them? How are you going to help them? And so that's how you have to do an expansion in the credit union world. And that's how we got these 4 counties, because they are very similar. I mean, yeah, and we didn't go into, we're not like Albany County. We're not even really like Northern Saratoga is not necessarily like Southern Saratoga County.
Right.
Right. Much more crowded and everything down there.
We're more rural.
Yes. So those areas. 4 counties that we got are much more like our immediate demographic up here in northern Saratoga. There is a lot of rural. There is a lot of farming. There is a lot of agriculture. There's a lot of wide open spaces in Fulton and Montgomery and Washington County and even, parts of Warren County and stuff like that, as there is, in Saratoga. Go out to the north or the east or the west, and it's similar to where we went, which is why Don chose those.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a really good opportunity. I've been out a lot in the areas and talking to people, and they're excited. And I think, and I'm not bashing larger organizations. Trust me, I have an account.
No.
I have an account at a very large bank.
Yeah.
I've worked for very large banks. I mean, banks and credit unions can work together.
Yeah.
We can do some things that banks can't, and banks have some things that we don't.
Right.
And we don't tell people don't have an account. We say we can work together. We can work with, you have an account here and you can have an account here, and we can all work together. I mean, where I've been, some of my best friends were my competitors.
Yeah.
And we all worked with each other. And I think that can still happen here. That's what we tell people. And we still do the same thing that you talked about earlier. Well, we don't have this rate, but so-and-so has this rate. It doesn't matter if it's a bank or a credit union. We say, well, so-and-so has this rate right now. We can't offer you this, but so-and-so can. Yeah. Knowing that, they like that we're honest and we're not trying to say we can't do this.
Yeah, definitely.
So we do work together. And I think that's a good thing. And differences, in comparison, we both are insured. People say, oh, credit unions don't have, I've heard that, well, my funds aren't insured. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Banks have FDIC, we have NCUA, $250,000 insurance, just like banks do.
Right.
And a lot of, granted, we are a smaller credit union, but a lot of the credit unions now, there's not a lot of difference anymore. We all have, the technology. We may not have as much technology as some of, the billion-dollar credit unions, but we have, the online banking. We have all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I like, too, is we still pick up the phone. We still talk to you.
Exactly.
We still, give out, our cell phone numbers and our personal numbers and different things. I was one place I was out west. Somebody called me in the middle of the night. They're probably out anyway, and wanted to let me know that one of the letters in my bank sign or the credit union sign right over my office was out. That light was out, and I wasn't going to see it in the daylight. It was like one of those. But he called my personal cell phone.
Hey,
and it's like it's a different world, which is why I switched over for that. I love that I can help people in a way I couldn't before. You can help people who need the loans. You can help people work on, and we do a lot of financial counseling too.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a financial, I'm not saying we're that.
Right, we're not.
But,
not
if somebody comes in and says, this is what I want to do. I want to buy a house in 6 months. I want to buy a house. I want to do this. And we can look at things and we can say, well, hey, you need to work on this and don't make any major purchases.
Right.
And, and then if we can get, do this and this and this, and then you can apply, we counsel them on the right things to do and how to get to that point where you can apply for a mortgage or, if you go, because some mortgages companies are a little different. We do have our own mortgage company, and we do our own mortgages. So you still get that. It's not, I can't say like the big mortgage companies where you call 1-800, whatever, and you don't know who you get and you don't know where they are or anything else. You can walk in and we do mortgages. Yep. We do home equities. We do everything, not everything, but pretty close to most of what everybody else does.
Oh, sure.
But on a more a personal, where you walk in and you know exactly who you're dealing with from start to finish, or you can go to the back offices and walk in and talk to, Lisa, the chief lending officer, vice president, or, talk to her, we have that ability, and they're usually wandering around anyway.
Yeah.
It's not like you never see them.
Oh, no, my gosh. That's the great thing, and how you build loyalty, because you were talking about interest rates and sending people, to get the best rate. And I had mentioned before the show, it was right after COVID, and people, were looking at rates because they got so low. And there were a couple banks that were trying to get members, and they were offering higher rates. And we sent a letter out to our members that so-and-so were paying this much for CDs. And if you wanted to put them in there, we would understand. And I'll tell you, probably 98% of our members wouldn't do it. They said, we're not going to do it. We do our transactions here, and we walk in, and everybody knows us. They say hi, and we just love the credit union. And that's when we were on Division Street, when we had a branch on Division Street. Back then it was the main office. And you couldn't find parking, and it was hard to get a parking spot downtown, but they were so loyal that they put up with that. But then it was one of the reasons why we moved up on Geyser Road, because we could offer a drive-through, an outside ATM, so they could get money out, at midnight or 2 in.the morning. So you find a way to offer more services without losing that personal touch, I think, in a credit union. Where a bank may put a kiosk, an outside kiosk or something, and you never see anybody. And it's just, the credit unions just give you that good feeling that they care. And that's, I don't know, I've been a member for quite a number of years now. And I even have an account in the bank that I worked at, which is in Gloversville.
Yep.
I got to tell you though, some of the modern things that are offered, it's like you can take a picture of your check and on your cell phone and have it deposited into your account. And I still can't figure that one out. I can't figure that one out. But I would rather go in and see one of the frontline people and talk with them and kid around with them. And but it's just the things that are offered today that you can do. It's amazing.
And I know, and our staff is allowed to be personal and take their time.
Yes,
they're not on. I know, out west and even back here, and there's a lot of big banks where they have to have so much quota every day. Yeah. You have to have done this. You had to open so many accounts. You had to, do this. It is just a grind. And they lose staff like crazy. And it's a very high stress job. And the credit unions, and that's not how we work. We want our staff to take the time for anything that they need. Like I said, they could stand there and do a million things, all with one person. But we don't do that to our staff.
No.
Our staff loves to be able to take that. They like having that ability to take the time with people, to get to know them and to know what they need, and not have that, oh my God, I wasted a half hour with Mrs. Jones, and that meant I should have had 4 more customers in that half hour time. Right. And I was supposed to do so many more transactions in that time, and I didn't get to talk about any mortgages, or I didn't get to do this all in that half hour that I was with Mrs. Jones. That's not how we work.
No. And, it may be corny sounding, but it's more of a family atmosphere.
Yes.
In all honesty, and I'm not just saying this, but when you go in, like I said, you're treated like a family member, and they do take their time with you. And I've been in line, and there would be member service clerk working on paperwork, and the other 2 were busy, and she'll stop doing her paperwork. And this isn't myself. People were in front of me, and they'll say, "Come on over, I'll take care of you." And she could very easily ignore them and do the work that she's doing, but she didn't. And that is a big difference, because I belong to a bank, and I've been in, and they'll just keep working, and they'll let the next one, the next teller, when that member or customer is gone, and they'll wait on them. So it's more of a family atmosphere without sounding too corny. I do have to do this right now. You're listening to WSPN 91.1 FM Skidmore Radio, and we're on the 13th floor of the Skidmore Tower. Our phone number in the studio is 518-580-5783, 518-580-5783. And we're here with Rosemarie Smith, who's the Business Development and Public Relations Officer for Saratoga's Community Federal Credit Union. Before we go on with anything more, let's tell listeners where our two offices are now. We moved from Division Street, and
We moved from Division Street over to 189 Ballston Avenue, over in the Price Chopper Plaza. It was the old Bank of America branch down at the very end. It's because Geyser Road, or not, because Division Street there was no place to park. It was really hard. We had been searching for a while to find the right fit for where we wanted to be. We wanted to have a lot more parking. We wanted to have a drive-through. We wanted to make things easier for our members. So we found that. Did some great updates. It's beautiful. We're real excited about it. Our members love it and plus we're right next to Mamma Mia's.
yes,
So
yes, they are.
that's both a personal and professional perk. Our members like it too. Boy, on a Friday night, that place is crazy. But it's a great location, and our other location is at 444 Geyser Road. In Ballston Spa. That has some great parking. It's not too far from where the Hannaford is and that whole area. That has an ATM, 24-hour ATM, and that has a drive-through too. So those are our two locations. But as we spoke earlier, those are our two brick-and-mortar locations.
Right.
We have a lot of other locations with a shared branching that's available. What I didn't touch on when I was talking before is we have free ATM use at all the Stewart shops ATMs. You can use your ATM card and everything at Stewart's with no fees. We're also in in Price Choppers in the counties that we're in. You can go in and you can use the Price Chopper ATM for no fee too. You're going to put in your card and it's going to pop up Saratoga Federal. So even though we don't have the brick and mortars in Warrensburg or, Amsterdam or those kind of places, we're still there with the products that you need. If you need money, you get them. If you need to make a deposit, you go to one of the shared branches and there is no pressure. They will not solicit you. We will not solicit their members. Yep. It's a way credit unions work together. Yeah. We're all trying to do the same thing for our membership. And so we're not in that. We're not going to try to solicit each other's things. We just go in, we welcome them, they do their job, we take care of what they need, and our members can go out there and do the same thing. So we have the two locations, again, 444 on Geyser Road, which is a great branch and, very convenient. And our new one that we're really excited about is the 189 Ballston Avenue. It's got a ton of space and lots of parking.
And it's really neat in there. And I think we're having open houses.
Yeah, we are.
So you don't have to be a member if you just want to go in and look around and, check out the staff and how the offices look. You're invited to do so. One thing I like about, and I don't use it, but is when you walk out of I don't know about the new branch in the Price Chopper Plaza, but on Geyser Road, when they have an ice cream freezer, and you can grab a ice cream bar on the way out if you want to. And I don't, that's fantastic. I don't know anybody else that has that.
Again, it's what you mentioned about the personal touch.
Yeah.
Which is what the credit union is more about. But we have, and especially being a smaller credit union, we have that ability to be personal and do that. So, and again, with comparisons to banks and credit unions, like I said, we both have, insurance. Don't ever let anybody tell you, oh, well, my money isn't insured, because it has the same insurance as a bank. With credit unions, typically we have lower loan rates and higher interest rates. Mm-hmm. That being because we're a not-for-profit and we're trying to make not that we don't want to make money, we got to stay in business, don't get me wrong, but we are not holding to shareholders in how much profits we have to make and stuff like that. We put that back into our membership in the form of better loan rates and higher interest rates.
Sure.
We have fewer fees. We have a lot of accounts with no fees.
Right.
We have a great this is really unique. We have a great money market product, which makes great interest, but you can have many withdrawals as you want, because most of the time money markets, you can only do so many a quarter and all this stuff. We have a great money market checking account where you get the high rates, and it's just like a regular checking account. But we don't have that we don't have that restriction. We can be a little bit more liberal on that stuff because of being a credit union. So, we don't have as many branches. I mean, I think with banks, that's the thing. They have a lot more branches than we do. Technically, as we're talking, we kind of have it. They're just not our brick and mortar.
Right, exactly.
They're kind of shared space. That's why it's called shared branching.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of basically for the most part. But I'm not going to know. I have an account with a bank because they do things. They do have some. We always tell. And, I was working with you. We'll tell them, sometimes it's not good to have all your eggs in one basket. It's good to have something someplace else.
Exactly.
And we work with everybody. We work with the banks and we work with other credit unions.
And like you said, we offer, if someone is having financial difficulties, we do try to work with them. And we do go in schools and do a class for students and, what services we can provide them when they go to college. And
we do student loans.
Yeah, student loans.
We have a great product. It's a teacher's loan. And a lot of people don't, and this is the only place I've ever seen it, is teachers can get, so they can afford to buy supplies. They get a $500 loan, interest-free, 9 months repayment, that they can use to buy whatever they need for their classroom or whatever they need to teach for that year. I mean, and a lot of times teachers are spending their own money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. My wife was a special ed teacher, and they get a little bit of a stipend from the school to use to buy things, but, it's usually never enough for what they want to do. So she bought things herself, and I know a lot of teachers do that, We do. We have student loans. We have access to that. I know my son, when he was young and he bought his first car, and he was at the dealership, and and he called me. He goes, "Oh my God, Mom, they want a gazillion % for this and all of that." And I said, "Connor, whoops, sorry. Anyway, I said, I told you not to go." I said, so he goes. So I get the guy on the phone. And actually, I ended up knowing him through Rotary. And I said, "Don't worry about it. He'll do it through the credit union." And he got the same rate that everybody else got. It didn't matter that he was young. Yeah. It didn't matter that he qualified just like everybody else did. No matter whether he was 20 or 60. Yep.
And the car dealership later they called me. He goes, Can we work with you on that loan? I said, no, they have to be members.
That's right.
So, and we don't, but they were like, how did you give that kid that loan? I said, because we're a credit union. Yeah,
I know it. Hey, one of the things I want to talk about you for a minute and just break away from, credit union. You're involved a lot in community service, which is one of the things that credit unions like to get into is community service. And how I know, and I'll put this out there, we are an unpaid board, unlike banks.
Volunteer.
But we do get $20 a board meeting. So, 12 months, if you go to every meeting, you get $20. But what we do with that is we don't keep it. We put it in, we call it a board service fund, and then at Christmas time we give $300 or $400 to Salvation Army or a school backpack program. So even though we make $20 a month, way back I said, what's $20 a month, to put in our checking account, and we decided to get a special account, so we use our money at the end of the year and give out different grants to schools or nonprofits in the community, which is a sign that, we care. we want to do community service. You know, we don't make a lot of money being a board member, even though the time you put in. But you're involved in a lot of community service.
Yes.
And you go all over the place. And you told me you joined, it made me happy, you joined the Glens Falls Kiwanis Club. And because I'm a Kiwanian in Saratoga. So how, if some group wanted to have you talk to them, how would they get a hold of you?
They can just contact me at the credit union, which is 518-583-2323, and my extension is 115. They can give me a call at any time. I'm on the road a lot. Yeah. But yeah, we all get involved in the community. I mean, like, I belong to the Hyde Museum. I belong to the Common Roots Foundation. We're in Chambers. We're in Lake George and Salem, New York, and and we're in all of these little places. I go to the Greenwich Chambers. We're going and being everywhere. I mean, I go back to, you will remember this, but I go back to being involved with Mary McClellan Hospital out in Cambridge, New York, years ago. I was on the hospital board, and I've been in nursing home board down in Hoosick Falls. I've been all over the place, and I think that's important. And a lot of our staff are that kind of community minded. They are involved, and a lot of them, the ones that, especially the ones who still have kids in school, that brings you into so many things.
Sure.
My kids are not in school, so I'm in all of these other more adults, where my kids, I don't have little ones at home, but everybody's involved. We're because it matters, and those are our neighbors.
Yeah. Why? The reason I wanted you on the show was not only to talk about credit unions and the credit union movement, was because when we get our monthly report and we see your report and where you've been, and you touch upon it, we look at that every month and say, how in the heck can you get to all these places? And you do when you spend time with them. It's amazing how you get around. And as you said, you belong to all these organizations in these counties. By the way, I love Salem and the Greenwich area and Cambridge area.
I was in the Greenwich Chamber almost from the beginning, shortly after it started. Before I was in banking, I owned a small business in Greenwich.
Oh, neat. Well, I had a friend who retired. He worked at the track for a while. He owned an insurance company in Cambridge. And Bob, and his last name escapes me now. I'll think of it when I get in my car. But I saw replica coins on the side, and the fellow that used to make those lived out in Salem, so I had to go through and, well, what pretty country it is back there. And
it's beautiful. Washington County has a special place in my heart for being out there for many years, and raising my boys in the Cambridge and Salem area. And I was so excited. That was another reason I was so excited about this position and coming on, because I know those areas so well. Yeah. Now, I can get you lost in any back road you want in Washington County and in Warren County. You may never find your way home.
You'll be the GPS of anybody GPS. Going out that way. But, and like you said earlier, those are the areas, too, that we want to service, because it's so spread out, and that we want to be in the middle there so they don't have to drive so far in to get somewhere. And that's kind of nice. It's, like you said before, it's a homey feeling. I moved to Saratoga in 86. My wife is from Saratoga. And when we got married, we lived in Johnstown, which is where I'm from, the Gloversville-Johnstown area. And she wanted to be closer to her parents. And Saratoga was a lot different then than it is now. It was a small community called the City in the Country, and it's gotten bigger and gotten away from that idea now. But you go out that way, and my gosh, I'll tell you, it's like old hometown, like you see in the movies.
And that's one of the reasons in being in Colorado, where I was a lot like Washington County and these rural areas. And so, and I even had animals when I was, I always had horses, and, I got into cows out there, but both my boys were in 4-H and FFA. So I've always been a big, farm ag person.
Sure.
Very much involved in that stuff, So I loved that part of Colorado too, and that's why I was so excited about the areas that we expanded into, because a lot of that, I used to do ag lending, and I'd be dressed up in my work clothes, but I'd have my Carhartt overalls and my muck boots in my car because I had to go count my four-legged collateral. So, not that we're doing ag lending, but I do love seeing that stuff. I think it's great. Don did a great job in the areas that he chose and where we are, and as I said, I'm really excited about it. I think it was a great move for us. We are, even though we only have the 2 branches, we are everywhere with our shared branch system.
Yeah.
If you ever, we'd love to have you come see us, but otherwise you can always call. We have all the technology that you need to do everything. We joke, we love to see you, but we have all the technology that we don't ever really need to see you if you don't want to.
Right. That's right.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds, but we have a lot of people who just like our staff and likes to see their smiling faces.
It is. Well, Rosemarie, I'm glad you were with us this morning, and I hope you can come back again in the future, and we'll be out in other areas. We can talk about that and the new things that you're into with the credit union, and I'm doing the radio show, but as part of the credit union, you're doing a great job. And
Thank you.
We're kind of proud of it to have
Thank
you
you
on board. So, the best to you, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well.